Right from the birth of creation, man has been walking on the outer path in total darkness. Man has followed this path for he knew no other way. When every experience comes to a dead end, when every joy has its limitations, he came to realize that he should travel inward. Sometimes we teach meditation for the attainment of tranquility and peace in mind, or to calm down an excited nervous system. But in fact, what we are really teaching is not meditation at all, it is pratyahar. Raj Yoga of Patanjali that explains the Pratyahar very well. When the brain is isolated, that is Pratyahar. Pratyahar is one of the very important aspects, I would say, in Dhyan. In the state of Pratyahar, the first thing that you do is you dissociate the sensory impulses which feeds the mind and form your vrittis, form your tendencies. When you concentrate on a form, repeat a mantra, or practice a certain, technique of pratyahara, you're actually trying to establish the state of pratyahara only. In the state of pratyahara, when you actually dissociate your consciousness from the memory channels and impulses, you are here conserving a great deal of energy, and this energy may manifest itself in the forms of patterns or visions. Sometimes people usually misunderstand these energy patterns and talk enthusiastically about their psychic occurrences, psychic experiences. And that is the point where they miss the purpose of meditation and wander off. If your practices succeed, then you are able to isolate your consciousness from perception. And this is the first step to meditation. To merely avoid external stimuli is not sufficient. The sense must be withdrawn before the mind can develop the ability to even concentrate. One pointedness can only come when pratyahara has been mastered. There is no shortcut at all. The first sutra of Patanjali, it says in itself, Yogash Vritti Nirodha, which means yoga is to be able to control the states of mind. Some people say that the definition of yoga is the union of individual soul, cosmic soul. Others have their own definition, but Patanjali, the codifier of Raj Yoga, I would say, the person, he defines yoga preciously as having an absolute control over the techniques of mind. These techniques are the formations or the superstructures of the mind. Mind is consciousness, mind is chit. The homogeneity of consciousness throws out waves after waves called as vrittis. As a pond, you throw out a stone and ripple after ripple when pebbles are thrown into it, right? The formations on the superstructure of the mind are the tendencies of the mind which we experience in our day to day life. Anger and jealousy are not unholy, passion and hatred are not sinful. These are the tendencies of the mind caused by external stimuli from the life, which we face during our period of experience of rag and dvesh, likes and dislikes, attraction and repulsion, passion and anger. I promise you that we can never control these unless we go to the very base. The base is chit, the mind, not the formations of the mind. Once you have been able to hold total control over the whole chitta, you are master of the subject. Yoga is nothing but this only. It is not a magic, not religion, not cult, not a mystic philosophy. It is just a science of mind, the whole mind. Psychology is a science of mental symptoms. Yoga is the science of the whole mind. My belief is when the psychology ends, yoga begins. Psychology talks about the symptoms, but we don't talk about symptoms, we talk about the whole subject. What is mind then? Mind is nothing but a reflection of the supreme consciousness, the mind that is free from disturbances and psychotic manifestations, free from all its so called attributes. The mind, as it is a thing in itself. That mind is a clue to the supreme consciousness. Indeed, the person who has been able to visualize the mind without its external manifestations can reach the highest experience. Mind works within a definite area and now not outside of that, but it can expand. It has no limitations. It can travel into the past or future. It is very powerful. It is not just a bundle of habits, a process of thinking or emotions. These are only the modifications of the mind and not the mind. These are the vrittis of the mind, the outer manifestations of the mind. Heat is not the sun, it is the modification of the sun. In the same way, mind is a different matter. Mind is chit, which means consciousness. You should be able to expand your consciousness beyond the sense objects. Can you visualize those things that are not subject to the sense organs? No, you can't. Perceive the sound beyond and below a certain range, outside of the infrasonic and ultrasonic range, because you are limited. According to Yoga Sutras, the mind have five model reactions. This is to say, I would say, the mind acquires knowledge in five different ways. And this is the limit of mind. When the boundary is broken and the mind is able to function beyond the five senses, then we say the mind has transcended the barrier. The mind, which has been realized as a very powerful source of knowledge and energy, is arrested by the limitations of human senses. The five karmendris, or your motor organs, and five gyanendris, or your sensory organs, impose limitations upon the mind. If we withdraw the senses, block them by the practice of pratyahara, the mind won't respond at all. Senses are the leading factors. If you're able to withdraw the senses and operate on the mental level, you can imagine how powerful the mind would be. Raj Yoga describes the process of evolution to samadhi in 8 steps. That is why it is, called as yoga in the 8 steps. Yam, Niyam, Asan, Pranayam, Pratyahar, Dharana, Dhyan, Samadhi. After pranayam, the fourth limb, actually comes up the spiritual side of Raj Yoga. Spiritual side when you move inwards towards knowing your own spirit and the detachment of your sensory cortex from the motor cortex. In the language of science in Raj Yoga, I would call it as Pratyahara. The mind is associated and connected with the sense organs. Through these sense organs, it receives stimuli from various objects. If you want to go in, you will have to cut off these stimuli or these links for some time. So, here is the sense cortex and here is the motor cortex, and they are linked. That link has got to be cut down. The senses and mind should be separated. They say in Raj Yoga that senses are responsible for action, for karma, and the senses responsible for gyan, perception. This should be detached from each other. The dissociation of mental and physical principle leads to absolute relaxation. when the mind is connected. This is an important topic of Raj Yoga when the mind is in association with the objects through the sense medium. Then it experiences pleasure and pain. When your mind is in association with the objects of perception through the medium of the sense of sight, for instance, it experiences pleasure and pain. So it is with the ears, with the nose, and with every part of the body that is capable of experiencing if you want the mind to be free from pain and grief. Then you should know how to relax. In Raj Yoga, Pratyahar follows pranayam and dharana follows pratyahar. You isolate the brain and the mind by delinking them from the sense organs. Even as we retreat in the evening hours back to our home, in the same way, the sense organs have to retreat back to their own dwelling. When this is accomplished, then you concentrate and fix your mind on one particular symbol of your choice. There is a very clear difference between pratyahar and dharana. Pratyahar is that practice in which you are trying to isolate the mind from sensory channels. Therefore, dharana becomes perfect and complete if your practices of pratyahara are done well. When you are trying to when you're trying to isolate the mind from sensory channels, then there is a lot of distraction that follows in your mind. Every time the chitta vritti becomes disturbed because senses they affect the mind, and the mind has become so much dependent on the senses that it keeps on accepting those disturbances every now and then. Practice of pranayam becomes also the practice of pratyahar. But besides this, there are many other practices of pratyahar. Patanjali makes a very clear reference about it. You concentrate on any great saint, you concentrate on any light, you concentrate on any sound, you concentrate on your own thought process, or you concentrate on anything you like. Pratyahar, it's a Sanskrit term, it's a retreat. Retreat means to return. Senses usually run towards objects. Eyes after forms, ear after sounds, nose after smell. This is how the senses run through the respective sense objects. The knowledge of the sense object is then transferred to the mind, and then stimulation is a constant process. It is being sent to the different centers of the brain, thereby disturbing the mind. It is agitated, active, and dynamic all the time. To silence the mind, we have to delink the mind from the senses. This delinking process between the mind and the senses, that is pratyahar.